All right, so in this video here, we're going to be taking a look at learning goal 53, and that is writing a linear equation using context. Now, it's important that we define what context is. In previous math classes and in a lot of places, and I will use this same term as well, we use the term word problem. Okay, now word problem often brings about a really scary connotation because it means it's not cut and dry. And that's context, but we deal with context every single day. Okay, so as a little bit of a background here, when context is brought into a question in math, the way things are described, okay, must match that context. And let's see if we can get. Okay, so they need to match the context. Now, again, context just means, let's call it real life experience or real life examples that can come into play when we are talking about a scenario. Okay, whether that is something that we see on a regular basis in real life and we go through every day, whether that is something that's a little bit more abstract, but it's still real life. Okay, that is the context we are talking about. The math that we have describes that context. Now, some people wonder why math. Well, math is a description of life. Okay, we describe what we do in life using math. Okay, whether that is area and volume, or if it is the way things work or a business aspect. Okay, everything can be described using math. Science is described using math. That's the context we are talking about. In math class, when we talk about solving a linear equation, it's not just to make you think about numbers and letters. We bring that later on into how does that describe the way we do things in real life. It is important that everything represented presented in a problem can be read by someone else and understood. Okay, so we need to make sure that we can understand what we are talking about in that problem. If that is a problem that deals with the walking speed or let's say driving speed, so we want to figure out how fast should we be able to drive or what is in place. Well, if I decide something and I use that knowledge to build a road, and someone in Winnipeg decides something different and builds a road, those roads won't necessarily be compatible. Okay, or if we're going to build a bridge and we have to decide how we're going to build that bridge, and it's got to meet, we're going to start on one side and the other side, it's going to meet in the middle. Okay, we got to make sure we meet at the right spot. Okay, that's math. That's understanding something and be able to be read by somebody else. Okay, and that's math in general. We need to make sure that everybody can understand what we are talking about. Now, the first thing we need to do, again, when we talk about a problem, and we talked about this in Learning Goal 52 as well, is we need to define our variables. And when we define our variables, or when defining the variables, each one must represent a part of the question that can change. Okay. So again, it's going to be a part of the question that's going to change. It's a variable, okay, and that's what we're going to talk about. Now, how I want you to represent your variables, and sometimes there's more than one. Sometimes we know a value, sometimes we don't know a value. Okay, but in this case here, we're going to try to come up with two variables, x and y, that represent something that is happening. Here's a couple of problems, and we're going to look at defining our variables. The first one states the cost of a repair job is based on the number of hours spent working. Well, there are two things there that could definitely change. One of them is the number of hours spent working. Okay, so we're going to label that as our x. X is the number of hours spent working. Okay, so if this is a repair job, it could really be anything. Um, let's just imagine that you are a mechanic. Maybe that's your dream one day. Who knows? But if you're a mechanic and you're gonna, quote somebody a price on a job, you got to make sure you know how much time you spent working on there. Okay, And the cost of the job is the other thing. Okay, we don't know what the cost is. It's based on the number of hours, but we don't know the number of hours. A small job is going to have a smaller cost. Big job going to have a big cost. Okay, so that's how we represent our variables. So in this case here, X represents a number of hours spent working. Okay, so once we know how many hours, we plug that in for X, and that will then give us the Y value based on the equation that we come up with. So this is defining our variables. This is a good way to define variables. Don't say that X is hours and Y is cost. Because when it comes down to it, if someone else comes in and reads that, they're going to have no idea what those hours mean. Okay, is that hours driving? Is that hours working? Is that hours spent sitting in front of the TV? We don't know what that hours are. So we need to make sure that we define it very specifically. Number of hours spent working, and Y is going to be the cost of the repair job. Cost has many different things as well. Could be the cost of parts, could be the cost of labor, it could be the cost of the job. Okay, we need to make sure we explain what we are using. Here's another one here. A fruit salad is a combination of grapes and pineapple and pieces. Okay, well, fruit salad is going to be the total, and there's going to be a number of pieces. We're not too worried about that, but there's going to be a bunch of grapes and a bunch of pineapple pieces. So those are going to be our two variables. So we're going to define that. X is the number of grapes in the fruit salad, and Y is going to be the number of pineapple pieces in this fruit salad. Okay, so there we go. We know now what X and Y are. Okay, so if I give you a value of X, we can go back and say, oh, that is the number of grapes that are in that fruit salad. If I give you a value for Y, we know that's the number of pineapple pieces in the fruit salad. Okay, and then we can use that to create an equation later on. Okay, so this is what we're talking about when we talk about defining our variables. And I'm going to give you a couple questions here to do. I just want to quickly look at the, there we go. Yeah, so what I want you to do for your assignment, we'll start with it right here. Is going to be question 1. I want you to work on question 1, solve that, come up with a solution to that, and it's just coming up with what are our variables.